When an industrial accident occurs, the immediate reaction is to look for a failure at the point of impact. Who ignored the safety protocol? Who bypassed the machine guard? For decades, legal blame often remained isolated to the factory floor or the immediate supervisor. The Occupational Safety and Health Code of 2020 eliminates that narrow scope. Investigators now rely on Chapter 3 of the code to determine statutory fault. The legislation moves away from a reactive model, where companies simply pay out compensation after a worker gets hurt. Instead, the statute builds a continuous, inescapable web of proactive legal liability. It establishes a chain of custody for safety. This chain links the architects who draft the building, the manufacturers who supply the machinery, the executives who run the operation, and the employees who execute the tasks. We are going to trace these specific statutory duties from the earliest stages of planning and procurement through the daily requirements of active operations directly into the mandatory government reporting triggers. Failing to understand how these obligations interlock leaves an organization exposed to severe corporate and criminal liability. The legal burden under the code begins long before a facility opens its doors. Section 9 places a direct duty on the architect. At the planning stage, they must factor in the safety of the workers building the structure. Furthermore, Section 933 requires them to account for safety hazards associated with the future upkeep of the completed building. Moving from building design to the equipment inside, Section 8 dictates the legal duties of the entire supply chain, including designers, manufacturers, and importers of workplace articles. The legislation places a stringent mandate on importers of articles manufactured outside India to ensure they conform to Indian standards. Under Section 8, the overriding requirement for all suppliers is that the equipment must be safe and without risk to the workers' health. To prove this, suppliers are legally obligated to carry out necessary research and make their testing information available to the facility using the product. Upstream vendors cannot wash their hands of liability upon delivery. Their legal accountability is permanently attached to the physical assets they supply. Once the facility is built and equipped, the operational phase begins, shifting the primary burden to the central node, the employer. Section 6 establishes the employer's bedrock duty. They must ensure the workplace is completely free from hazards that cause or are likely to cause injury or occupational disease. This includes specific environmental mandates. The employer is now legally obligated to manage the disposal of hazardous, toxic, and electronic waste safely. There is also a proactive health mandate. Employers are required to provide free annual health examinations for prescribed classes of their employees. The code introduces strict administrative compliance points. Every employee must be issued a formal letter of appointment. Undocumented labor is a statutory violation. Furthermore, no charge can be levied on any employee for safety maintenance or required medical examinations. The liability deepens in high-risk environments. Section 7 assigns strict joint and several liability to the owners and agents of mines. In the event of a contravention in a mine, the managers and appointed officials are deemed guilty by default. To defend themselves, they must actively prove in proceedings that they exercised due diligence to secure compliance. The employer's role is strictly defined. They must proactively engineer, finance, and document a flawless safety ecosystem. The chain of custody extends all the way to the end user. The code binds employees with their own severe legal duties. Under Section 13, if an employee notices an unsafe or unhealthy situation, they are legally required to report it to the employer or safety representative as soon as practicable. Section 15 criminalizes reckless interference with safety equipment. However, Section 14 balances this by granting employees the right to obtain safety information and introduces the imminent danger clause. Workers apprehending serious injury can report it, forcing immediate remedial action. If the employer disputes the existence of this danger, the issue bypasses internal management. The matter is referred forthwith to the government's inspector-cum-facilitator, whose decision is final. Employees are legally deputized monitors. They possess the statutory power to halt operations without fear of retaliation if the environment becomes unsafe. When a facility's proactive safety matrix fails, the code enforces strict reactive protocols. Section 10 establishes clear notification thresholds. If an accident prevents a person from working for a period of 48 hours or more, the employer must send official notice to the authorities. Under Section 11, any dangerous occurrence specified by the government must be reported, even if no bodily injury actually occurred. Section 12 dictates the protocol for occupational diseases. If a worker contracts a disease specified in the third schedule, the authorities must be notified. This creates a unique strict liability for attending medical practitioners. They must report these diseases directly to the chief inspector cum facilitator. If they fail to comply, they face a specific penalty extending to 10,000 rupees, bypassing the employer entirely. If an accident causes death, the chief inspector cum facilitator is legally bound to launch a formal inquiry within 2 months of receiving the notice. Filing these reports is a statutory trigger. It is designed to invite immediate state intervention into the facility. Chapter 3 of the OSH Code 2020 makes it clear: treating workplace safety as an isolated, floor-level task is legally obsolete. If an incident occurs, the investigation will not stop at the point of injury. The labor officer will trace the fault line backward through this entire matrix to find the exact point where due diligence failed. They will verify if the architect designed for safe maintenance, if the supplier provided accurate testing data, and if the employer maintained the documentation. And if a dispute arises, the inspector cum facilitator holds the ultimate authority over the facility's operations. True corporate compliance means managing the entire chain of custody. The statute will hold the organization accountable for its weakest link.